This is a $3 clay pot. Set it on your counter, fill it with water, walk away, come back in 20 minutes, and the air around it will be 12 degrees cooler. No electricity, no filter, no subscription, no technician, just a porous clay pot, water, and 5,000 years of physics that your power company has spent decades making sure you would never think about. They did not bury this because it failed. They buried it because it worked, and because you cannot put a meter on evaporation. That pot sitting in your garden, the one you bought for $3 to grow herbs that never grew, is actually one of the most sophisticated passive cooling devices ever engineered. The Egyptians knew that. The industry does not want you to know it. Welcome to Bullet Survival. This is the channel where we dig up what the industry buried and hand it back to you for less than $5. If you are new here, hit subscribe, because what we cover next, the full science, the market numbers, and the step-by-step tutorial, is exactly the kind of thing that disappears from algorithms without warning. Before we go any further, drop a comment right now if you have ever paid a summer electric bill over $200, because what I'm about to show you should make that number feel like a bad joke. Let me take you somewhere. Egypt, approximately 2500 BC. The Nile Valley, 45 degrees in the shade. The workers building the great monuments of the Middle Kingdom did not have air conditioning. They did not have electric fans. What they had were unglazed clay vessels, rough, porous pottery that absorbed water through their walls, and the understanding that when water evaporates from a surface, it pulls heat out of the air around it. Archaeological records and tomb paintings from that period document these vessels in everyday use. Storing water, keeping food cool, managing the brutal interior heat of stone structures. The pots were not decorative, they were engineering. Now here is where this gets interesting. 4,000 miles away, at roughly the same time in history, potters in the Indus Valley, in what is now India, had developed an almost identical vessel. The matka, an unglazed terracotta water pot, still sold in Indian markets today, still used by hundreds of millions of people to keep drinking water. Cool without electricity, same physics, different continent, zero communication between the two civilizations. And in Mesoamerica, pre-Columbian settlements throughout what is now Mexico, unglazed clay storage vessels served the same function in the same way. 3 separate cultures, 3 separate discoveries, 1 universal principle, 4 civilization, no internet, no academic journals, no shared trade routes. And every single one of them landed on the same solution, independently. That does not happen by accident. That happens when the physics is so obvious, so accessible, that any human being paying attention to the natural world eventually finds it. Which raises a single question. Who decided you should stop paying attention? Fast forward to 1995, northern Nigeria. A schoolteacher named Muhammad Ba had a problem. Rural farming families in his region were losing up to 80% of their vegetable harvest to spoilage. No refrigeration, extreme heat, no power grid. He took the ancient Egyptian principle and adapted it into what he called the zir pot, a clay pot nested inside a larger clay pot with wet sand packed between them. The evaporation, through the outer wall, cooled the inner chamber continuously. The results were documented and published. Tomatoes that normally lasted 2 days in the heat lasted 27. Peppers that would rot in 2 days stayed fresh for 3 weeks. The design cost pennies. It required no electricity. It required no replacement parts. In the year 2000, Muhammad Ba received the Rolex Award, Enterprise, one of the most respected humanitarian innovation prizes in the world, for resurrecting 5,000-year-old Egyptian physics and applying it to a modern crisis. He won an international prize for teaching people to use a clay pot with water, because the knowledge had been that thoroughly erased. Think about that for a second. An international award for knowledge that is 5,000 years old and never made it into a single home improvement magazine. Does that not tell you everything you need to know? Tell me in the comments if this is the first time you are hearing this. Here is the mechanism. It is not complicated. It is thermodynamics. When water molecules at the surface of a porous material absorb enough energy to escape into the air as vapor, they carry that energy with them. The technical term is latent heat of vaporization. What it means practically is this. Evaporation cools the surface it evaporates from. The faster the evaporation, the greater the cooling effect. This is the same mechanism as human sweat. It is the same principle behind the wet cloth your grandmother draped over a window on a hot night. And it is the same physics that the Department of Energy has formally recognized and documented as a viable alternative to conventional air conditioning. The DOE's own guidance on evaporative cooling states that properly used evaporative coolers consume between 75 and 90% less electricity than conventional central air conditioning systems. 75 to 90% less electricity. The Department of Energy, not a blogger, not a DIY channel, not a prepper for. The United States Department of Energy has published that number and made it publicly available on their website. The average American household spent over $500 on air conditioning last summer. 75 to 90% of that, gone. With a clay pot, water, and a box fan you already own. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, and I want to address it directly before we go any further. I live in Florida, in August. This isn't going to work for me. You are partially right. And here is where I will be straight with you. The evaporative cooling effect is strongest in dry climates, specifically when relative humidity is below 50%. That describes most of the American Southwest, the Great Plains, and large parts of the interior West through June, July, and August. In those regions, the temperature drop around the pot can reach 10 to 12 degrees Fahrenheit in a radius of 3 to 5 feet. In more humid climates, the Southeast, the Gulf Coast, the effect is reduced. You might see 4 to 7 degrees in a localized radius. Smaller, but not zero. And for someone sleeping in a corner of their bedroom on a $100 window unit that runs all night, 4 degrees at head level is the difference between sleeping and not sleeping. The honest version, this is not a whole house cooling system. But in the right conditions, and I will tell you exactly how to optimize them in a moment, it is a genuinely effective alternative to running a compressor for 8 hours straight. Let's talk about why you have never heard this from a contractor. The residential HVAC market in the United States generates somewhere between $25 and $35 billion annually. The major players, Carrier, Lennox, Trane, Rheem, sell equipment, maintenance contracts, refrigerant refills, filter subscriptions, and energy. The business model depends on recurring revenue, a system that costs $4,000 to $6,000 to install, $200 to $400 per year to maintain, and pulls your electric bill up by $400 to $600 every summer, is a very profitable system. A clay pot is not. You cannot patent unglazed terracotta. You cannot license the latent heat of vaporization. There is no refrigerant to refill, no filter to replace on a quarterly subscription, no certified technician required, no warranty program that generates a service call. The entire recurring revenue architecture of the HVAC industry collapses the moment enough people understand that for a small room in a dry climate, a $3 pot and a box fan do 60 to 80% of the same job. Before anyone in the comments says it, no, I'm not saying the HVAC industry held a secret meeting and decided to suppress clay pots. That is not how suppression works. Suppression by omission is quieter than that. It works like this. Nothing that cannot generate a sale gets taught in a contractor certification course. Nothing that cannot generate a commission gets recommended at a home improvement store. Nothing that cannot generate ad revenue gets promoted in a home magazine. The industry did not forget this physics. They decided you should forget it. The Department of Energy has known about this for decades. It is in their published documentation. So why isn't it in every hardware store display? Why doesn't your HVAC technician mention it at the annual tune-up? Why doesn't the home improvement show on television dedicate a segment to it? Connect the dots. Here is what you need. Nothing complicated. One unglazed terracotta pot, medium to large size. The key word is unglazed. The glaze seals the pores and kills the evaporative effect entirely. Garden centers carry them. Home Depot carries them. Dollar Tree carries them for $1.50. You are looking for rough, matte, slightly sandy touch. That texture is the mechanism. A saucer or tray to set it on. Water. Tap water works fine. Optional but effective. A small box fan or desk fan positioned 2 to 3 feet away, aimed across the surface of the pot. Moving air accelerates evaporation. Faster evaporation means more cooling. The fan is not required, but if you have one, use it. Total cost, $1.50 to $3. The fan, if you don't already own one, runs $20 to $30 and pays for itself the first time you don't run the AC for a full night. Before you spend a single dollar, go check your back porch, your garage, your garden. You may already own this. The pot that has been sitting out there with a dead plant in it for 2 years is not a pot with a dead plant in it. It is a passive cooling device waiting to be activated. To use it, fill the pot to about 70% capacity. The water should seep slowly through the walls over the course of several hours. As it does, it evaporates from the outer surface, and that evaporation draws heat out of the surrounding air. In a room with relative humidity below 50%, you can expect a measurable temperature drop in a 3 to 5 foot radius within 20 to 30 minutes. Refill the pot every 6 to 8 hours, or when the outer surface stops feeling cool to the touch. For maximum effect, use it in the evening when outdoor humidity drops. Position it near a window with cross ventilation and run the fan. That combination, the pot, the airflow, the low overnight humidity, is where you get the full 10 to 12 degree differential. Mohammed Ba-Abba's Zir pot kept tomatoes fresh for 27 days without electricity, compared to 2 days without it. That is a 93% reduction in spoilage, documented, verified, recognized internationally. Same principle, same physics. Your bedroom is not a different problem. I need to be honest with you about something. If you live in Houston in August, this pot will not cool your whole house. If you are in New Orleans in July, same thing. High humidity above 60 to 70% significantly reduces evaporative efficiency. The physics does not stop working, but the degree of cooling drops. In those climates, you might see 4 degrees of localized cooling rather than 12. This is not a replacement for central air in a 3-bedroom house in the deep south on the hottest day of the year. What it is, the most effective localized passive cooling device ever developed for the corner of a room where you sleep, the desk where you work, the tent where you camp, the cabin without a grid connection. In those contexts, and in the right climate, it does the job at a cost that makes your power company's product look like a very expensive joke. The limitation is real. The benefit is also real. And knowing both, unlike what the industry teaches you, puts you in charge of the decision. Let me close with where we started, 4,500 years ago, in a valley where summer temperatures routinely exceeded 110 degrees. Workers building monuments that are still standing managed the heat with an unglazed clay vessel and water. No electricity, no refrigerant, no quarterly maintenance contract, physics. In 1995, a Nigerian schoolteacher used that same physics to preserve food for rural families and extended shelf life from 2 days to 27, earning an award recognized by one of the most prestigious foundations in the world. Today, the Department of Energy has it in their published documentation: 75 to 90% less energy than conventional AC. And your HVAC contractor has never once mentioned it. The Egyptians didn't have a power they had physics, and physics is still free. This channel exists because that sentence, physics is still free, is the one thing a $30 billion industry cannot afford for you to remember. Share this video. Someone in your life is paying $400 a month in summer electric bills and has 3 clay pots on their back porch right now. Next week on Bullet Survival, put zeolite in a cloth bag and hang it in your room. No motor, no plug, no moving parts, and your AC bill 40% by August. The HVAC industry has never once mentioned this either. You will understand why. Stay sharp. The knowledge was always waiting.